Good day, everybody. Welcome to the webinar on Argentina. Great to see so many people tuning into this. For us personally, it's a big wow to see how interesting and on topic Argentina is at the moment with the previous RenoVar round 1 and 1.5. It's fair to say that it has proven to be a go-to market and one that is kickstarted in the truest essence of the word, kickstarting a market. The webinar is in the build-up towards the event and conference El Futuro Solar number 2 will be held in April coming year. And as a start, I would like to first thank our partners in this event. Great to have Eternum Energy as a local partner involved, and quite recently we added Jinko Solar as a first sponsor or lead sponsor in the upcoming event. On the agenda today in this webinar, we have, of course, myself, Rick Theeuwen from Solarplaza, doing a short introduction on our company and what we will be doing in Argentina in 2017. And then our main speaker or keynote of the webinar, Mr. Soares from the Ministry of Energy and Mining, probably by most of the attendees in today's webinar, a well-known figure. After his presentation on RenoVar 1, 1.5 and the future outlook, we will have 2 short poll questions, and we have the opportunity to do a question and answer round with Mr. Soares. About Solarplaza, founded in 2004, we are a platform, a knowledge and business-to-business development platform across the world for solar PV industry. We've done over 80 events in many countries. Recent ones include Iran, Kenya, and Solar Asset Management Europe. We've been in over 25 countries on all continents, and throughout the years we have been establishing a big network of solar PV professionals across the board, from project developers, consultants, up to financiers and investors. Upcoming events are in line with our goals. We have Trade Mission to Indonesia coming up as a hot emerging market, Solar Future Nigeria in April as well. In established market as North America, we do solar asset management, and in the Netherlands, our own humble home country, we do the Solar Future NL. As mentioned, this webinar is about Argentina because in April, 4 to 6 of April, we will be organizing El Futuro Solar Argentina, the 2nd edition. Our track record specifically on LATAM includes multiple events in the region, from trade missions to solar asset management events, always following where the market has a new opportunity to grow and prosper. In our previous event in Argentina last June, we had a PV trade mission to underline the emerging opportunities in the market. We had a range of companies joining us, local and international. Turned out to be a huge success, also the conference itself on the solar future in Argentina. So what's in store? 4 to 6 of April, we will do a follow-up. Argentina is truly kickstarted with RenoVar 1 and 1.5. So we will be organizing a conference to have a recap on these successful rounds and see what the future holds for Argentina and solar energy in Argentina. For international and local companies trying to get a foot into this market or deeper insights, we also host a one-day financing and regulatory workshop to meet governmental stakeholders, the institutions, and discuss financing means and opportunities with relevant stakeholders. The event is focused on offering a platform to develop solar PV. So it is a B2B business development platform, and it also brings together the biggest insights from industry leaders and key decision makers in Argentina. It comes, of course, with plenty of networking opportunity. In the conference alone, already over 10 hours, all aimed towards developing the PV industry in Argentina. Practical notes on this session. Of course, we expect and hope that there are plenty of questions to address to Mr. Soares. You can do so either through Twitter using the hashtag ElFuturoSolar, or use the chat box in the GoToWebinar menu, where my colleagues will gather all these questions. At the end, we can get some answers from Mr. Soares on the most relevant or urgent questions. For any technical issues, also use the chat box. We have colleagues at hand that can help you in any way. After the event, we will make the presentation slides available and also the recordings of this presentation. Of these recordings, we also make a Spanish transcript, so everybody that's interested in the Argentinian market can tune in and get updated through this webinar. For now, that was all about the practical issues and Solarplaza itself. Now the main event and speaker of today is Mr. Mauro Soares. He's a National Director for Renewable Energy at the Ministry of Energy and Mining. He has extensive industry experience, 20+ years in conventional energy and renewable energy, and I would say one of the central figures in the Argentinian renewable energy sector. He's been involved from the start with CADER, the association, public think tanks and civic organizations on the prosper of renewable energy in Argentina. I will give the floor to him.
Hello, good morning, everybody. This is Mauro Soares on this side. Thanks for joining the webinar. Thanks to all the people at Solarplaza for the invitation. With that, it has been a great introduction. I guess we're up to speed, so I will get right into the presentation if that's right, Rick.
Please do, please do.
Okay, okay. Well, today I have prepared a short presentation on what we are. Excuse me. Let me just get control of this and see if make sure this is working.
Yes, yes. There's the mouse. You control the mouse now and the presentation. Yes.
Okay. Sorry. So the chat points today is I'll talk a little bit about who we are and what we do at the ministry and at the Undersecretariat for Renewable Energy, about where we're heading to, about our contractual and regulatory framework for renewables in Argentina. Everything has been implemented over this year. We'll talk about what we have done this year concretely, which is especially all the results about the RenoVar program, which most of you might already be acquainted with, but I will go in details through how that process has played out, and then I'll talk very briefly about what's next in our agenda for 2017 and forward. Okay. So we're part of the Ministry of Energy and Mining. Under the President Macri administration, the Argentine government has a fully dedicated ministry for energy and mining. That is something that did not happen before, and so that is an element that has to be taken into account to see the relevance and the importance that the government is putting on the energy sector, specifically in renewables in this case. So we are part of the Secretariat for Electric Power, and we are an independent Undersecretariat for Renewable Energy, and we are organized in 2 different teams that we work hand in hand. Sorry. My team is the National Office for Renewable Energy, and what we do is we basically design and implement all the new regulation for utility scale projects. We also work on the follow-up of contracts and existing and future tenders, and we keep track of the mandate that the country has, the legal mandate. I'll talk about that in just a few minutes. We implement all the measures that tend to, or that are aimed at fulfilling that mandate, the legal mandate of a certain share of power in the country coming from renewables. We also are, my team is also in charge of all the cooperation efforts, be that with the local provincial and international governments, also with multilateral credit agencies, export banks. All of that goes through one of my team members who coordinates all of those efforts. And lastly, what we do is we do all the technical and regulatory analysis of existing regulation in the country, in the provinces, and also local, regionally and internationally, so that we make sure that our regulation is something that the market has favored in some other places, and that's how we got ideas, for example, for RenoVar, by taking the best practices in each of the different markets. In parallel with my team at the Undersecretariat, what we have is another team which is led by my colleague Max Morrone. He is in charge of promotion, so he carries out all the activities that have to do with education, with promotion in general of renewable energy, but especially, and now he's focusing a lot on distributed renewables, which is something that will come big over the next couple of years. So we'll talk about that in the end, because I know many questions will come in that way. So he is also working on different resource assessments in the country and different initiatives, such as, for example, the National Institute of Renewable Energy, which is a joint initiative with the Ministry of Technological Development of this government as well. So let me pass on to the next one. Where we're heading to. We have a legal mandate, as I mentioned, under the renewable energy law that was passed last September 2017. We have a legal mandate which is to reach 20% of our power needs, power demand for Argentina, for all the interconnected system, 20% by the year 2025. That goes in steps. The first step is in 2018, we should have 8% of our power coming from renewables. We have a very short time to that, and at this point, what we have is just less than 1 gigawatt. So we have to go to about 3 gigawatts of installed renewables by year-end 2018, and we're working for that. And I will show you how we will reach there in just a minute. And we need to get to about 10 gigawatts by the year 2025, accounting for the growth in power demand in the country. So what we have today is just less than 1 gigawatt, about 800 megawatts of renewables. About 500 are old small hydro plants that are considered renewables. And that accounts for about 1.8% of our power demand in the country at this point. So what have we done this year? We have carried out a bunch of actions that will lead us to have, when those actions are implemented and all the projects that have been awarded and or are being in the process of being awarded, we will reach about 9%, adding up to what we have today, about 7% more, 7.2% more, which comes from the awards given under RenoVar 1.0, 1.1, 1.5, sorry, and also about the legacy contracts, which we call legacy contracts, many contracts that had been signed under the previous government administration, and they have been in trouble for reaching financial close and have not been built to this date. So we are having those reallocated to new model contracts and given them enough guarantees in change for a decrease in the price that they will get for the energy compared to what they had. But they become bankable, and they will get built and get to COD within the next 2 to 3 years time. Okay, so with that, I guess it's a first step. As Rick mentioned, we kick-started the market, and so this is our first step to reaching 20% renewable by 2025. This is a very ambitious goal. We think that about $15 billion will have to be invested over the next 8 years in the country to reach that goal. And part of that will be through the tenders, so like RenoVar will have future rounds, but also self-consumption and private corporate PPAs will play a role, as well as distributed energy. So it will be a very varied and wide spectrum of measures that will be taken over the next few months that will kickstart other sources of renewable energy contracts in the country that will push forward the industry locally. So this in the context of what needs to be done in Argentina's power sector. Renewables is probably the largest chunk of investment, but there are also large investments in hydroelectricity, nuclear, thermal power and transmission that need to be done. And the Secretariat of Power Energy is working on all of this in parallel. And lastly, just to have an idea of the market in Argentina today, it's about 135 terawatt hour of electricity each year is consumed by the whole system in aggregate, and that will grow approximately 2 to 3% per annum to the year 2025, should be reaching around 170 terawatt hour of power consumed. So now I will try to go pretty quickly on the legal framework. I know many of you probably are acquainted or have been participating in different previous either seminars or have been involved in some of the projects, but just to give an idea to those who are new to the market, just a brief introduction to what the legal framework looks like. The legal framework for renewable energy at the utility scale is based on Law 27191. That is our main piece of legislation, and that especially has these 4 blocks of instruments or elements that make it very interesting and effective in its aim to promote renewables in the country. First, it has mandatory targets, which apply to 100% of demand, and are set, as we saw in the graph just a couple of slides before, it's 8% starting in 2017-18, reaching 20% by 2025. Then it has a mandate to diversify the resource that is used both geographically and technologically, and that is important because that has allowed us to build a tender with different blocks of technologies and apply those independently one from the other, meaning that we can pay different prices for different technologies, and they're not competing one-to-one, but that allows for less mature markets to also be tackled through the tenders, and or through specific legislation that we might implement in the future. Also, a very generous fiscal scheme with anticipated reimbursement of VAT, which is something that has a large impact on the financials of the projects, and also some incentives to local manufacturers, like a tax credit on local purchases of equipment. And lastly, the FODER Trust. FODER Trust is a trust fund, a public trust fund that will be implemented. It is already created and all the accounts are opened, and now we're funding the guarantee account, but it basically has two different objectives. One is to provide financing through issues of different financial instruments through the trust fund with the government guarantee, and also, and its main objective for this first couple of rounds of RenoVar is that it will be used with its separate guarantee account. It will be used to provide energy payment and early termination guarantee payments. So this is very important. It's a very important piece of legislation that we have implemented that has allowed probably, if not the most important, in terms of providing long-term security to the investment that is needed in the sector. So, as I mentioned, Law 27191 is a main piece of legislation passed by a large and very large majority of both chambers in Congress in Argentina in 2014 and 15. More than 90% of positive votes in both chambers. That has been implemented or regulated with two presidential decrees that set the high-level regulation for the sector, and then we have been issuing ministerial resolutions signed by the Minister of Energy and Mining, which have different specific roles of regulating, for example, the tenders, the fiscal incentives, the tax-free import duties, etc., etc. And then some of these resolutions have instructed CAMESA to carry out the routes 1 and 1.5 of the RenoVar program. So in terms of market development, there are three mechanisms where you can get a PPA in Argentina. You can go through the public tenders, as has been evidenced under the RenoVar tender, or you can go for a private PPA, corporate PPA with large users, or a self-generation project where, for example, a large user or a medium-sized user can install its own renewable energy generation at its site of economic activity, for example, in its own rooftop, or it can also use the grid to get from the point of generation to the point of consumption. These last two elements, the private or corporate PPAs and the self-generation, is where we're working now on the detailed regulation. I will probably talk a little bit more in the end of this presentation. About the contractual framework now for RenoVar in specific, which is the way that we are now kickstarting the market. We have set up two contracts which together act as a regular PPA, and the reason for doing that is that under the power sector in Argentina is regulated through a national law that was passed in the early 90s, and that law created CAMESA. CAMESA is the ISO of the system, but it's also the clearinghouse of all the transactions. But CAMESA cannot purchase electricity for its own. It's not a trader. It's just the ISO, and it's just the clearinghouse of the system. So the way we have to give long-term certainty, the way we have drafted all the documents is that CAMESA is acting on behalf of the end users, be those end users designated by law through the distribution companies, and also for the large users in a direct manner because they are allowed to purchase their own electricity. CAMESA is representing those end users, and those end users are paying for the electricity, but CAMESA cannot assume many of the typical off-taker responsibilities that come in a typical PPA. And because that is not possible legally, we have implemented what we call the trust adhesion agreement. The trust adhesion agreement is an agreement where the FODER, which is a public trust, the government of Argentina is assuming some of the off-take responsibilities, for example, an early termination payment, which is something very interesting because it has allowed us to have a framework that is I wouldn't say bulletproof, but it's very sound in securing the cash flows of these projects and facilitating the financing. In terms of guarantees, and that has been done through a bunch of different guarantees, which are structured in 3 different levels. First, we have an energy payment guarantee through the guarantee account of the trust fund. Then we have a sovereign guarantee, which is implemented for those cases in which the contract needs to be terminated and or the assets need to be paid for by the trust fund so that the investor is reimbursed for or compensated for the breach in some of the there are certain causes that I will talk in a few minutes that can lead to the sale of the project to project company to the FODER. And also, and last but not least, the war-back guarantee, which is a third level of guarantees which acts when or kicks in when the government of Argentina has failed to provide a payment under the previous guarantees, guarantee levels. And that is an optional part of the program, and it's something very interesting that we have implemented. And approximately half of the market, half of the awarded, half of the bids received and half of the awarded projects have requested and have been granted the World Bank guarantee, which they will pay over the term that they have chosen to get it for. So with that, I would like to pass very quickly on the liquidity guarantee scheme. And the liquidity guarantee scheme is guaranteed by the FODER. And what it does is after the IPP, the seller of the electricity has generated and has delivered that electricity to the end users through the national grid. Of course, that electricity has to be paid for. So CAMESA, which is, as I mentioned, the clearinghouse of the system, will collect from the users the cost of that electricity and will pay the IPP. So that should work all the time. What happens if that doesn't work? Then there's a mechanism where the payment can be done on behalf of CAMESA, can be done by the FODER Trust under the FODER Trust Adhesion Agreement. And so that guarantees that every month the electricity is paid for, and that the project companies can pay for their debt services or their operational costs, and then their debt services, and then distribute dividends as is customary. So the trust fund will be funded initially with treasury money that will come out of the budget, this year's and next year's budget of our ministry. And also the regulation has a provision that allows for the implementation of a charge to direct charge to the consumers to provide this guarantee funding, which will have to have at all times enough money to pay for 12 months of commitments under the PPAs that have been signed under this program. Next guarantee is the solvency or termination guarantee. And the way it works is that there are certain causes, for example, lack of payment or lack of enforcement of an arbitration result under the contracts, that can lead the IPP to decide to early terminate the PPA with CAMESA. If that's the case, then the IPP will notify CAMESA, it will keep the assets and will turn around and sell the electricity generated to a third party, either through a private contract or to the spot market, as the case may be at this point. If the IPP is not willing to terminate the contract with CAMESA and keep the assets and continue its operations in a different market under a different contract, it can sell the assets to the trust fund, and so it notifies. And where are the cases, what are the causes that can allow for this, for the IPP to early to sell the assets and exercise its opt-out or its put option for the contract. And the causes are 3 or 4. Lack of payment, of course, change in the foreign exchange rules that are today, as you know, Argentina is back to normal in terms of foreign exchange flows, and so if that is not the case in the future and is detrimental to the economics of the project in a certain way, and that is all treated in very high detail in the contracts. So, for example, in that case, or in the case that the government of Argentina decides for whatever reason to terminate or cancel all the guarantees that are in place at this point, those are causes of sale of the project. And in that case, the IPP needs to notify the Folar Trust that it is exercising its option to sell, its put option, and the Folar Trust will deal with its trustor, with the ministry, and also with the treasury to get the funds to pay the IPP. And the IPP will get paid for the unamortized portion of their investment at that point, at the point that this happens. If the government at that point is not paying, then if the project has requested and has been granted the World Bank guarantee and it has continued to pay and be compliant with all the different provisions that the World Bank guarantee has itself, then the World Bank can pay part for the guaranteed amount, which is not the full investment amount, but it's a partial guarantee, but it's enough to provide enough security to the IPPs, and it has worked very nicely over the first couple of rounds. In fact, we oversubscribed in round 1.5, as I will tell you in just a minute. We have oversubscribed the request for the World Bank guarantee, and so at that point, that's the way the investors can get out of Argentina in case that things do not work in the future. And this scheme of guarantees has made the program attractive enough to have the results that I will show you in just a minute. So going back into the results, and I will probably speed up a little bit here so we have time for Q&A. So for the results, you know, the RenoVar project the RenoVar program has been pretty innovative in our view, in the sense for Argentina at least, because we have launched the program in mid-May with a public consultation process. That was something that had not been done in Argentina in a long time. We carried out a public consultation for about a month and a half. Then we drafted the final versions of the documents. We published those by the end of July. We received the bids envelope. It was a typical sealed envelope tender. We received 123 projects or bids on September 5th of this year, which are shown in this slide. And you see on the right-hand side of the slide, you see a map with different dots, which is a location of the different projects. We carried out a tender that was split in different quota for technologies: wind, solar, biomass, biogas, and small hydro. We got, as I mentioned, 123 projects in many different provinces for a total of about 6.3 gigawatts of power. The initial power that was requested that was tendered was only 1 gigawatt, so that means the first round was 6 times oversubscribed, which was very exciting for us to see. In fact, we were not expecting to be that oversubscribed, and that created a bunch of problems in my team, like rushing out to hire more people and buying up more computers and stuff to be able to do the assessment of all the technical and legal documents in a very short period of time. Well, after we completed the evaluation of this, we opened up the price envelopes. Well, let me give you a few details on the distribution of solar bids received. Out of the 123 projects, 58 were solar, and those were especially located in the sunniest regions of the country, be that the northwestern portion of the country. You see here a close-up of the map, and this map is made with a tool that is kind of a heat map, where the darkest red means the higher concentration of projects. So Salta, Jujuy, and San Juan were the provinces with the most projects. It's very interesting to see the high capacity factors that have been declared by the projects. We were very strict in requesting a lot of technical information, and one of that was an EPR. We requested an EPR of each of the projects, done with the equipment, the generation equipment that was presented as a choice for the developer at that point, which is free. They're free to change, and that's an important part of the design of the tender. Technology can be changed until final investment decision, and as long as a new EPR is presented to the off-taker and the contract is amended in its minimum guaranteed energy, IPPs are free to optimize both the design and the technology used in the projects, and that has been a very important piece of this tender, because it has allowed a lot of flexibility to optimize and to be as competitive as possible, and that shows in the prices we obtained very clearly. So many provinces had, especially as I mentioned, the ones that are all over the Andes in the northern part of the country, that have the sandiest conditions. And which is also important is that we have been very supportive of local manufacturing. So we requested local content declaration and commitment, because it is used, for example, the local content is used to untie when the price bid is within 3%, one bid to the other. The bid that has the highest local content is privileged and is awarded. So that has worked pretty nicely in both rounds, where we have very close pricing, very aggressive pricing. So there were small differences between two projects, and we have awarded the one with the highest local content. So because that is the case, the local content is guaranteed and is penalized if it's not fulfilled after COD, which will be audited and certified by a public entity. And so it is interesting to see how many of these projects have managed to provide different background projects that are associated with other projects in the manufacturing space. Some of them, of these projects, for example, in Mendoza, are tied to the building of some local manufacturing, or some others are tied to locally producing some of the support structures or tracking systems, etc. So it will be very interesting to see how that plays out in the future. I need definitely to speed up given the time. If you allow me just 1 second. So we have awarded under the first round 29 projects. 4 of those are solar for 400 megawatts at a price of about 60, average price of $59.75. And those projects, those solar projects, are located in the province of 2 in the province of, 1 in Salta, 3 in the province of Jujuy. Then we carried out, and that is the slide I'm showing now is the names of the projects and the companies involved. Under round 1.5, which we launched right after the award of round 1, it was kind of a playoff we went back and see that, and we saw that there were many projects that had not been awarded. Actually, around 90 projects that had been presented and had not been awarded. So we gave them a second chance. So we received in early November, 11th of November, we received 47 bids for the playoff of RenoVar, 19 in wind, which are shown in this slide, and then 28 in solar PV. 9 of those located in the northwestern region of the country, which are the provinces are highlighted there in light blue, and the rest in the other 19 in the rest of the country. Total bids for round 1.5 were 925 megawatts of projects in 28 projects, as I mentioned. We awarded 20 of those solar PV projects under round 1.5, and the criteria that we used for the award, for the final decision to award, was even though we were just requiring to award 600 megawatts in total, 200 solar and 400 wind in different regions of the country, the minister decided to award everything that had transmission capacity under the capacities that have been defined in the tender documents. So that covers with the projects that were competing for the transmission capacity. We have awarded all available capacity under this tender. That doesn't mean that there's not enough, there's no transmission capacity left over, but it means that under the rules of this tender, there's no more capacity left over. Now we have to reevaluate and refocus on the spots in the grid that have remaining capacity. So 30 projects in total, 10 wind and 20 PV were awarded at an average price of $54 per megawatt hour. This is a detail of the northwestern region with 5 projects awarded, 21, 15, 80 megawatts each by different players. And in the rest of the country, there are more projects. There are 15 projects, and we have both local, provincial, and international players that have been awarded under this second or the playoff of RenoVar. So in summary, what we have under RenoVar 1 and 1.5 is a total of 916 megawatts in 24 projects that are located all over the northern part of the country, as is shown in this graph. In this, it's all, you have to see all the solid orange dots are the location of the solar PV projects that have been awarded under the 2 rounds of RenoVar this year. In terms of prices, this is a slide that shows the cumulative power capacity to the pricing of it's like a curve that accumulates on the horizontal, accumulates the capacity, and in the vertical shows the bid price. And so you see that in red, RenoVar around 1.5 accounts for a very large improvement in the prices of under the tender. This last slide is the projects, shows the projects that have bid in both rounds, 1 and 1.5, and it shows how some projects have halved their price from one round to the other, while others have decreased around 16%, but on average the prices that have been bid on the 1.5 round, are about 30% lower than the prices that have been bid under the round 1.0. So we're very happy with this. Something I must note make note now is that these prices are nominal prices. The PPA has two adjustments for the price. One is a sort of prefixed inflation adjustment of 1.7% per annum, and the other is an incentive factor, which is also something that it changes over each calendar year, and the objective of implementing that incentive factor is to allow the projects to have an incentive, as the name of the factor implies, to improve COD, to make an early COD and benefit from a higher price for those months or years that the COD can be improved. And so another objective of the incentive price is to incentive factor on the price also is to improve the cash flows over the first couple of years and decrease the cash flows over the last few years after year 10 of the contract. It's a 20-year contract. So that improves the economics and improves both the NPV and the IRR of the contracts. So what's next? And I will be very brief here, and I will allow time now, Rick, for the Q&A. What is next? What we're working on at this point? We're working on signing all these awarded contracts. There are 59 in total, in all technologies. We are working to sign the first run PPAs and for their adhesion agreements by January 5th, which is our legal deadline, and round 1.5 will have up to mid-2017 to be signed off. Then we're working on the detailed regulation for the corporate and self-generation contracts. That is a complex piece of regulation because it has to be coordinated with the rest of the wholesale market functioning, and there are changes coming up also in the thermal and hydropower contracts. So we're coordinating those, and that's why the regulation is being delayed a little bit. But we just want to make sure that it works when it comes out. Also, we're working on different pieces of detailed regulation for local manufacturing and certification of local content that are needed for the projects that have been awarded and for some others that are planning for the future. We're working on distributed energy. My colleague Max is working hand-to-hand with a few legislators to come up with a good and successful legislative project that will foster distributed renewable energy in the country at a national level. Well, some time over the next 6 months, probably within the second quarter of next year, we will launch a RenoVar 2.0. And also we're thinking or analyzing to have certain special rules or tenders for some of the technologies that are less mature and need special provisions, and probably those will be tendered in a separate way from the mainstream wind and solar, which we know are very mature and competitive markets. Well, with that, I guess I finished. I leave you in the end a detailed list of all the awarded projects, and well, I'm open for Q&A. I guess that's all.
Thanks so much, Mauro. Sorry, I didn't want to make you feel hurried to round up quickly because there's so much to discuss and talk about, in all honesty. I think it's really quite a clear indication of what happened. Also good to know that some of these developments also caught you by surprise in the essence that it's such a huge success. We've been mentioning kickstarting quite often, but once again, it has been proven with these numbers and figures. For now, it would be good if we could I will scroll to the final list. As mentioned, you will get this, everybody listening in and tuning in will get the presentation at the end. So to look back on all these projects and all the numbers, that is probably what people are most interested in as well, to see how it develops, also with regards to the World Bank guarantee, of course. For now, we also indicate together with Mauro, it would be good to have a short poll on to see if we can have a grasp the essence of major concerns in the Argentinian renewable energy future. What are most urgent or pressing issues according to our attendees? There's a quick poll coming up that dives into these questions. If you could indicate the two of the most urgent concerns you have in mind, then we can have a general idea of what's happening in the market and what the market players are looking for. I'm terribly bad at whistling, otherwise I would make some background music for everybody. Mauro, as you indicated in the speech as well, it caught you maybe a bit by surprise. Were you also surprised by the follow-up, round 1.5? How much people?
Oh, sure. I would have lost any bet. I didn't play any bet, but I would have lost them for sure. My feeling was that we would have about between 3 and 4 gigawatts for round 1.0 and about half of what we got for the playoffs. Actually, we were caught by surprise as well with 1.5. I expected around 25 bids, and we ended up with 47 in 1.5. So,
okay, we have the results coming in of the poll. Especially, of course, the availability of finance is one of the major concerns. I don't know what your idea on this topic is. It's of course a bit out of your hands in that it has to do with capital markets across the globe and how other policies crystallize the market reaction that out.
We're also concerned. We're also concerned with that issue, but we're tackling that in many different ways. We're working very closely with all the multilaterals and all the investment and development banks, both in North America, in Asia, and in Europe. So we're carrying out different activities and meetings with them, so that we make sure that they're up to speed and know how the regulation works. And many of those are coming up to speed very nicely, and we will see interesting developments over the next few months. Of course, we need to see some financial closings materialize over the next few months as well, as the contracts get signed and these projects go ahead with their investments. So until that point, it's mostly speculative, but we're very active on that issue as well. The other thing we're doing with that is that we're putting all the elements that this government administration has at this point to the service of the awardees, so that we make sure that nothing is on our side is not working and it's getting in the way of reaching financial close on this project. So we have, as many of you know, or some of you may know, we have an agency for the promotion of investments and foreign trade, which is part of our foreign relations ministry and the Ministry of Production, and it's a very professional group of people, and they're at the service of the awardees. We're sending a letter to each of the awardees, just making sure they know that the agency is available to help them through all this process. So we're concerned, but we're working on that. It's not that we're just leaving that to the market. We will be monitoring that very closely, because it's in the essence of the success of the program.
Yeah. And on this financial closure of the round one, is it progressing nicely, you would say, or is that sort of like it has to come from January 5 onwards, when it's completely crystallized how it will go?
No, well, we're hearing from different players different stories, but in general it is progressing. of course, it's the first time. Some of the companies that have been awarded are deciding to issue, for example, corporate bonds and finance that way through their balance sheets. Others are just focusing on pure project finance, and the documents are prepared for a project finance, but that has not happened in Argentina over the last few years, and so the banks and everybody has to get up to speed again with the project financing elements, which are complex at one point, and so that will take probably a little bit longer. But most projects have committed to financial close within 6 to 8 months of the signature of the PPAs. So we still have some time to see how that plays out.
Yeah. Exciting times ahead of everything. We will start the second poll as well. It's looking ahead of towards maybe a second round of tenders. Because it was so successful, we started lower. We will see how will you, as attendee and as interest in the Argentinian renewable energy market, would consider the upcoming possible tender round RenoVar 2.0. What will be the average price, or what will be the winning prices coming in at for the PV solar in RenoVar 2.0? I will give you some time to answer this question. Maybe to another question, Mauro, in the meantime. There are some, as you mentioned, you're working on there's quite favorable financial incentives in place for the RenoVar projects, custom import duties, maybe tax credits, all these kind of things. What is the situation on this? Is it already clear there will be a tax exemption for renewable energy products, and what products will that be?
Yeah, that's very clear. Until the end of 2017, we have a resolution that was signed and published before the submission of the bids on both rounds, and it contains a table with a detailed list of all the products that are exempted of import duties. That is applicable until the end of 2017, so for the next 12 months, say. After that, we'll go back to the normal rules, and that is because the law, the renewable energy law, allows for those exemptions in import duties up to that point in time, and no longer. In order to extend that, there has to be some other legislation that has to be passed, and we still don't have a view on that. What we have recommended is that everybody considers that after this exemption expires, that you will pay the customary import duties. And price that into the bids, and that's what every company did.
Yeah. Okay. We got the poll answers in. The price range that came out winning would be between $45-55 per megawatt hour. Do you think that's a feasible? Would you consider that a success again if it will be between those brackets?
Well, that will depend. That will depend a lot on many things. I see the pricing. We see the pricing on the first and the second round has been very aggressive, and the World Bank guarantee has played a role in that aggressiveness of the market and the level of competition. For next rounds, we will have to see what the level of guarantees are, what the specific rules are, where the location of the projects are. And so there are many things, and I wouldn't focus so much on pricing. We still have a lot of uncertainties for the next rounds to see if that is a good pricing or not. We see that the best spots have been taken by the best spots where transmission capacity and the best solar resource was available have been taken mostly by the awards, and this was 2 rounds. So there are many things that have to be played out. Also, the evolution of prices going forward and the delivery time of the project is also expected to play a role in the pricing. And as you know, the cost of equipment goes down every quarter. So depending on the time horizon that we set for the delivery of that energy, we probably have people be more aggressive on those discounts to the capex as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and do you are you considering adjusting the regional diversification criteria in the next round, or like, I don't know if it's already clear?
We will oversee. We are analyzing every single element of the program and thinking of what needs to be adjusted for round 1.0. So everything is now being evaluated. There are many things that worked very nicely as we understand, and others that need to be adjusted. So the geographical diversification is an element that is mandated by law. So most probably you will have some provision for that in round 1.2 as well.
Also, yeah, of course, quite a lot of people are interested what will be around 2.0 bring. The targets for 20, correct me if I'm wrong, 2019 are 12%. Can the market calculate like a RenoVar 2.0 is aimed to cover this increase of 4% in the total renewable, in the total energy capacity?
Yeah, we should. We still haven't decided on the strategy and whether it will be one or more rounds to get to that next step. But the most logical thing is we have committed to fulfill those mandates. We have done already enough to cover the first step with the implementation of all these 59 projects where they're up and running, be that 2018, probably some of those will kick into 2019 as well. We need to make sure that the mandate is fulfilled. We're also conscious that the time frame is very, very tight. And so we need to see the market progress over the next few months to decide on all of those issues for RenoVar 2.0.
There's not
financing, the construction of the projects, the availability of all types of resources, how the imports are playing out, and I mean, there are many, how the transmission is designed to be expanded. There are many issues, and I cannot tell much about how it will play out because we're working on that at this point, and we will continue to work over the next few months.
You know how to flood yourself with work, Mauro. You're not taking any downtime in the meantime. That's impossible. We also have maybe one more question. Other question that we got sent. We will try to compile a file and maybe do a follow-up report on these because there are some questions.
That would be great.
Yeah, we have a question coming in also distributed generation. There are multiple schemes that could be put to use. Are you aware, could you highlight some of these, what the aim is for distributed generation in Argentina?
Well, what I can tell you today is that we are working on a very detailed, with a lot of detail on the different mechanisms that have been used. We're also collaborating with other countries in order to be able to make the best decision possible. The rate setting mechanisms in Argentina are complex. The rates in different parts of the countries are very different one from the other. So what could work in terms of incentives or opportunity costs for self-generation at the rooftops, for example, in one province, do not work in others. So in order to get this kicked out and working, we need to still work a little bit more on the incentives and how the program would look like. I cannot tell you today any certainties because we're still in the drawing board with all of this. And we're looking into the feed-in tariff, the typical feed-in tariff, net billing, net metering, and the challenges and the pros and cons of each of those. And we haven't decided yet on the scheme that will be implemented.
No, because DG, the distributed generation, is part of the renewable energy goal in the long run. So will this can also affect the RenoVar 2.0 and sizes of future tender rounds?
Yes, but that will take some time to kick in, and so we see the corporate market, and we see the future rounds of RenoVar as probably the most impactful in terms of megawatt incorporated to the system, at least for the next couple of years.
Yeah. Well, Mauro, I will not steal any more of your time. I would like to thank you for your contribution right now. Also, wish you good luck on the results of RenoVar 1.5, moving towards financial close, COD of all these projects, and also a possible RenoVar 2.0. I know there's tons of work.
Much.
Yeah. To conclude our webinar, I would like to say, of course, this was it. We would like to thank Mauro Soares as a speaker. We have in the handouts available in the webinar, we have a post-show report of our June event to have a look, a recap of what we've done in June. In short, we hope to see you in April. I hope Mauro also hopes to see you in April. Then we can make it another successful event and kickstart hopefully a distributed generation scheme, maybe a RenoVar 2.0, and all the successful projects that are about to happen in Argentina in the renewable energy sphere. For now, thank you. I wish you all a good day. For those in Argentina, have a good working day. For those in the rest of the world, have a good maybe lunch or evening. Thank you once more.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very
Bye-bye.
much. All right, bye-bye.